We have major legal breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. The Supreme Court has just ruled in a case regarding a straight woman and a alleged work discrimination. They have officially rejected pleas to make it harder for people to prove work discrimination. Let's break it all down and figure out the entire details in this legal breaking reporting and video analysis update. Ladies and gentlemen, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously in favor of a straight woman named Marlene Ames in a case involving alleged work discrimination, employment discrimination based on her sexual orientation. The case, Ames v. Ohio Department of Youth addresses the issue of reverse discrimination lawsuits, particularly in the context of job discrimination. Ladies and gentlemen, unanimous ruling. The United States Supreme Court's 9-0 decision sided with Ames, signifying a broad consensus on this issue. Ladies and gentlemen, lowered bar. Ladies and gentlemen, lowered bar for reserved discrimination lawsuits ruling makes it easier for individuals from majority groups, including heterosexual individuals, to bring lawsuits alleging work discrimination. Workplace discrimination. Ladies and gentlemen, rejection of heightened standard. Ladies and gentlemen, the court rejected the argument that plaintiffs who are members of a majority group need to show background circumstances to prove an employer discriminates against the majority. This was a requirement that was previously used by some courts, like the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, which had initially ruled against Ames. Ladies and gentlemen, case remanded. The ruling sends the case back to a lower court for further litigation with the standard burden of proof for discrimination claims. Ladies and gentlemen, basis in the case of Title 14. Ladies and gentlemen, the case for the basis in Title 14, relies on Title 14 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits employment discrimination based on sex, including sexual orientation and transgender status. Background of the case. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Marlene Ames, who worked for the Ohio Department of Youth Services, ladies and gentlemen, alleged she was denied a promotion and then demoted because she is heterosexual. The jobs she sought and held were subsequently filled with LGBTQ+ individuals. Impact of the ruling, ladies and gentlemen. The Supreme Court's decision will affect lawsuits in states where courts had previously set a higher bar for majority group plaintiffs in discrimination cases. The ruling emphasizes that Title 14 protects individuals from discrimination regardless of their membership in a minority or majority group. Ladies and gentlemen, in case you guys didn't hear me clear, I'm gonna read through it again. The Supreme Court ruled unanimously in favor of an Ohio woman in a job discrimination case, stating that members of a majority group like white or heterosexual individuals do not need to meet a higher legal standard to file lawsuits claiming reverse discrimination. This decision, ladies and gentlemen, makes it easier for individuals from majority groups to sue for workplace discrimination. Ladies and gentlemen, elaboration, background. Of the case. Marlene Ames, ladies and gentlemen, an Ohio woman, claimed she was passed over for a promotion and later demoted because she is straight, according to BBC. She argued that her employer discriminated against her based on her sexual orientation. Ladies and gentlemen, the high bar. Ladies and gentlemen, previously some courts in 20 states and the District of Columbia had required individuals from majority groups like straight individuals to meet a higher standard of proof to prove discrimination. Ladies and gentlemen, the Supreme Court's decision. Ladies and gentlemen, the Supreme Court overturned this higher bar, ruling that all individuals, regardless of their background, should be subject to the same legal standard in employment discrimination cases. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to go over the implications. Ladies and gentlemen, this ruling could lead to more lawsuits from individuals claiming reverse discrimination in employment. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to go over and go through Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's opinion. Ladies and gentlemen, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson delivered the opinion for the court, stating that the additional requirement imposed by lower courts was inconsistent with federal law and previous Supreme Court precedents. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, in case none of you guys heard me fully and correctly and clearly, I'm gonna go over it one more time for you guys. The Supreme Court, ladies and gentlemen, on Thursday ruled unanimously in favor of a straight woman who twice lost positions to gay workers, saying an appeals court had been wrong to require her to meet a heightened burden in seeking to prove workplace discrimination because she was a member of a majority group. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this legal breaking reporting and video analysis video. If you did enjoy this legal breaking reporting and video analysis video, please firstly like, comment, share, subscribe, and enjoy. Secondly, if you want to make sure that you're always up to date on all the things legal breaking reporting wise on the side of politics, please hit the bell icon as well as the all notification option. Thirdly, if you guys want to also make sure you're always up to date on all the things legal breaking reporting wise on the side of politics, please follow me on my social medias that'll be linked down below in the video description below. I'm on Instagram, Snapchat, Threads, as well as TikTok. Fourthly, ladies and gentlemen, please help me reach and achieve the goal of 170 plus subscribers. The reason why I'm saying 170 plus subscribers is because, ladies and gentlemen, right after we reach and achieve the goal of 170 plus subscribers, we have more subscribers to reach and achieve right after we reach and achieve the goal of 170 plus subscribers. Fifthly, ladies and gentlemen, please stay safe, please stay positive, and know that justice will prevail eventually correctly on the correct side of the law, despite Donald Trump and his illegal, unconstitutional regime and administration's illegal actions, illegal executive orders, illegal behaviors. And always look for the points of light in today's unfortunate induced illegal darkness caused by the illegal, unconstitutional Trump administration, Trump regime. And until my next legal breaking reporting, ladies and gentlemen, and video analysis update, please stay tuned. And I look forward to talking to you guys in the next legal breaking reporting and video analysis update.